Throughout history, wars have been explained through the egos of kings or the thirst for land. But in this video, you will discover that all wars are, in fact, the greatest customers of the financial system. You will learn how nations sustain wars even when they are on the brink of collapse, how inflation is effectively a hidden tax stealing the value of your money, why the 18th century salt monopolies are identical to the mechanisms of modern central bank policies, and who the real winners behind the debt spiral are. We are decoding the rules of the financial chessboard so you can be a player, not a pawn. In history books, wars are usually explained through the egos of kings, religious conflicts, or territorial expansion. However, in the backrooms of financial history, there is a much simpler, more mechanical, and more shocking explanation. Finance. Sending an army to the front is not just about feeding soldiers or producing ammunition. It is about sustaining a massive cash flow and an endless cycle of credit. How can a country continue to wage war for years, even when it appears completely collapsed and its infrastructure is in ruins? The answer begins with unraveling the darkest, most complex, and most fascinating mechanism of the modern financial system. Throughout history, wars have been the biggest, most ambitious, and most loyal customer of the financial system. When a war breaks out, no state has enough gold or cash reserves in its treasury to finance such massive destruction. This is where the infamous war bonds, which states think are their saviors, but actually use to enslave themselves for generations, come into play. This is the greatest persuasion project in history. While the state tells its people, invest for your country, win for your tomorrow, it is actually spinning the wheels of the financial system for its own survival behind the scenes. However, the primary buyers of these bonds are never just the small savings of the public. The great financial institutions, international investment banks, and central banks are the main architects of this debt spiral. The system works as follows. The state borrows, banks buy this debt, and the central bank provides unlimited liquidity to the banks. This is, quite literally, creating destruction with money created out of thin air. These debts, which appear as mere numbers on paper, translate into bombs, tanks, and jet fuel in the real world. The cost of war is not just the ammunition spent or the cities destroyed. The real hidden cost is the money printed. When a state prints more money to finance a war, the purchasing power of the existing money in the market drops, and this is paid by the public as an inflation tax. While the people pay for the war with their lives at the front, those back home participate in this bill, as their savings silently and visibly erode. Now let me take you to 18th century France. At that time, the state established such a tax system to finance wars and luxury spending that it turned into one of the strangest financial tyrannies in history. Gabelle, the infamous salt tax. Salt was not just a flavor enhancer back then. It was a vital necessity for preserving meat, storing food, and animal husbandry. The state knew this very well. They engaged in financial engineering and established the royal salt monopoly. You were forced to buy salt only from places determined by the state and at prices set by the state. But the cruelty went further. The state did not just force you to buy salt. It mandated that you buy a specific amount. Even if you had salt at home, you were compelled to purchase that quota-based salt determined by the state. People turned to smuggling to escape this tax. What did the state do to protect this financial order? It lined the borders with soldiers, sentenced smugglers to death, and even raided people's homes to interrogate them, asking, "Where is your salt? And why have you consumed so little?" When we look at financial history, this is not just a tax. It is the story of how a state used a basic necessity of its people as a financial weapon. What central banks do today with printed money is exactly this. They are slowly stripping away the foundation of life, the money that is the reward for your labor, an invisible tax inflation. Just like the tax placed on the salt of French peasants back then, a financial hand is reaching into your purchasing power today. Every major war in history has left a massive wave of inflation in its wake, and this inflation continues to gnaw at the public's purchasing power for years, even after the war has ended. from the late 19th century to the two bloody world wars of the 20th century. We can clearly see how monetary policies shaped wars and redrew borders. The abandonment of the gold standard and the freedom to print paper money without limit directly affected the duration and intensity of wars, making humanity's capacity for destruction limitless. The most interesting and disturbing phenomenon in a war economy is not just that the winning side gains territory, but that the detissuing power of the financial system increases geometrically, while warring nations fall into a debt trap. The financial actors providing the debt often remain neutral, maximizing their profits by providing financing to both sides. This is also the answer to why the system always seeks instability. Debt is the most profitable, most sustainable product ever invented by humanity. Debt-ridden states are forced to work for years just to pay the interest on that debt, meaning that even when the physical noise of war subsides, an era of financial slavery begins. Today, we see that digital wars, economic sanctions, and financial blockades have taken the place of tanks and rifles. Sanctions are a modern war of isolation, trapping a country within itself by cutting it off from the global financial system, the central arteries like SWIFT. It has become much more effective, less costly, and more sustainable to bring a country to its knees through debt, embargoes, and financial dependence rather than with cannons and rifles. When we look at financial history, we see a geopolitical fracture behind every major crisis and a massive debt crisis behind every major war. The real question is not why does war break out, but who is financing this war, and for whose interests. If the financial world is a chessboard, the soldiers are the pawns, and the central banks and global capital are the kings. You cannot understand the rules of the game without knowing who controls the kings. A country's money supply has become its most powerful and insidious weapon in foreign policy. Wars are no longer just physical clashes. They are conflicts between currencies, the struggle for dollar hegemony, the eternal demand for gold, and the rise of digital currencies are actually parts of a much larger war. In the future, when financial power wars completely replace physical wars, those who understand the true nature of money will survive. The world system is full of echoes. Every economic news story we hear today is actually a repetition of the past. And as echoes of finance, we are trying to see the future by chasing these echoes. Money is not just paper or a digital digit. It is the greatest, most complex, and most lethal weapon history has ever seen. Wars end, treaties are signed, but debts must always be paid, and these debts are the heaviest burden falling upon future generations. The combination of human greed and the financial system continues to write the bloodiest pages of history. And this cycle will never be broken unless we understand the system. Every economic collapse carries the seeds of a new war within it, and every war is the precursor to the next financial collapse. Our duty is to unveil these misty curtains and show that money is not just a medium of exchange, but an instrument of power and control. History repeats itself because people forget. But we are here to break this cycle by listening to the echoes of financial history. Remember, wars are won or lost, not just on borders, but in bank accounts. You must know how the system works, who wins, and who loses to protect your own financial future. In today's world, as an investor or a citizen, understanding how the global debt cycle works is your only defensive mechanism. You must realize how every step taken by central banks changes the value of the money in your pocket. Those who do not learn from the mistakes of the past are doomed to be the victims of the future. At this point, the real question you must ask yourself is, will I be a part of this system, or a strategist watching it from the outside? If you want to find the exit to this complex labyrinth, you must learn to read not just the charts, but the intentions of those who draw them. On the Echoes of Finance channel, we will break down the walls of this labyrinth and reach the truth. We will delve deeper in our next analysis. Until then, never let money manage you. Learn how to manage money. Do not just be a passive viewer. Be an observer who knows how the system works. Because this knowledge makes you not just an individual, but a strategist building your own financial future. To see the naked truth beyond wars, debts, and crises. Continue this journey with us, continuing to listen to the real echoes of history. Remember, the future is hidden in how the past is read.